November 25th, 2018. A night that still haunts me. The victim arrived at a rundown roadside motel just before dawn, his headlights slicing through the dense fog that clung to the empty highway. He checked into room 12 at the Rustwood Inn, paying in cash for a 3-night stay. No luggage, no conversation, just a nod to the tired-looking clerk before disappearing inside. By the 4th morning, the motel owner, Frank Delaney, realized his guest had overstayed without checking out. When knocking yielded no response, he sent his teenage son to investigate. What that boy saw inside room 12 was something no child, no person, should ever have to witness. By the time I arrived, the entire area was a pulsating nightmare of flashing red and blue lights. The air was thick with the murmurs of exhausted officers and shaken-up tenants who had been dragged from their rooms to provide whatever fragmented details they could recall. A crime scene technician, pale as a ghost, fumbled with his phone, trying and failing to dial his mother. I've been a crime scene investigator for over 20 years. I've seen things that would churn the stomach of the most hardened detective. There was the case in 2006, when a missing hiker was discovered deep in the woods on the county line, burnt beyond recognition from the waist up, yet somehow untouched below. Not a single ember or scorched leaf surrounded the body. Or the New Year's Eve incident. An intruder broke into a livestock processing plant, activating an industrial carcass shredder. The remains found inside? Human, pulped into an unrecognizable mass. The only clue left behind was a small, steel plaque, no bigger than a business card, engraved with a single number, 0002916. But what I found in room 12 that night, nothing had prepared me for it. Even now, I lie awake, picturing the grotesque scene beneath the motel's flickering fluorescent lights. The victim checked into the Rustwood Inn on the morning of November 25th, 2018. According to motel owner Frank Delaney, the guest did not interact with staff or other visitors and had no known associates during his stay. The body was found lying on the bed in a supine position. The victim's skin had been crudely flayed, large sheets of flesh hanging loosely or peeled away completely to reveal exposed bone. The head was missing, not severed cleanly, but torn, the ragged edges of the neck showing signs of extreme force. A set of human bite marks was discovered on the victim's right pelvic bone. Forensic analysis later confirmed they belonged to a child, a juvenile between the ages of 3 and 6. No matching dental records have been found. Most disturbingly, the victim had been dressed in women's clothing post-mortem, a torn black satin slip and lace stockings that did not belong to him. The significance of this detail remains unknown. Additional findings: blood spattered across all 4 walls and soaked into the carpet. Blood volume exceeded the victim's estimated total, suggesting the presence of a second source. Teeth, 33 in total, were meticulously arranged in a perfect circle on the desk, each tooth precisely placed within a 10-inch diameter. The forensic odontologist confirmed that 32 of the teeth belonged to the victim. The 33rd tooth, however, belonged to a young woman. Using dental records, we traced it back to Alyssa Monroe, a 24-year-old woman who vanished in 1997. Her case had gone cold over 2 decades ago, filed away and forgotten until now. The head of the victim has yet to be found. The victim's tongue was discovered in the bathroom sink, severed cleanly at the base. The precision of the cut suggested the use of a surgical-grade instrument or an exceptionally sharp blade. What was most unsettling, however, was the intentional placement. The tongue lay in isolation, untouched by blood or tissue residue, as if it had been carefully placed there after the excision. First responders also noted disturbing activity involving the room's coin-operated television. Witnesses reported that the set had turned on by itself at odd intervals, flickering with static approximately once an hour. Upon closer inspection, the the television showed signs of tampering. It will be dismantled for forensic analysis, with fingerprint recovery and trace evidence collection pending. Addendum: when crime scene technicians finally pried open the back panel of the television, they found both of the victims' eyes inside. The screen had been removed, and the eyeballs were placed where the cathode ray tube should have been, an arrangement too precise, too deliberate, to be anything but symbolic. The only piece of clothing confirmed to belong to the victim was a pair of denim jeans, identified by motel owner Frank Delaney as the same pants the man wore upon checking in. They were drenched in blood, the fabric stiff and dark. Inside the pockets, investigators recovered a one-way bus ticket from Redwood Junction to Briars Hollow, a packet of apple-flavored gum, and a single brass button, origin unknown. No wallet, ID, phone, or luggage was recovered from the scene. A pair of small leather shoes was discovered neatly placed at the foot of the bed. Despite the blood-soaked carpet surrounding them, the shoes themselves were spotless, suggesting they had been positioned after the crime. Addendum A: 3 weeks later, a shirt matching the victim's description was discovered partially buried in a cornfield in Pine Hollow, a rural town 240 miles south of Black Hollow. The bloodstains tested as a strong match to the samples found at the crime scene. However, without identifying the victim, a definitive link remains unconfirmed. Addendum B: the small leather shoes, sent for forensic dating, were over a century old, manufactured in 1909. Their condition and antique value suggested they had been carefully preserved over time. Given their size, they were almost certainly made for a child. Strangely, the room itself showed no signs of struggle. The furniture was undisturbed, nothing overturned or broken, no forced entry, no defensive wounds on the victim's remains. The only thing missing was the Bible from the bedside table. Neither Frank Delaney nor his son Ethan, the only known witnesses, could recall seeing the victim with any luggage at check-in. There was no way of knowing whether his possessions had been stolen or if he had arrived with nothing to begin with. The motive remains as unfathomable as the crime itself. I'll spare you the procedural details. I lost track of how many nights I spent staring at this damned report, reading and rereading it like it held some secret I'd overlooked. For 6 years, it lingered in the back of my mind, a case that refused to let go. At my request, the department kept it open, despite the lack of leads, suspects, or even a clear reason for the killing. But at the start of this year, they finally shelved it, and we were no closer to solving it than we were the day we found him. Until now. Last week, I got a call. The FBI reopened the case. At first, I thought maybe someone else in this department felt the same obsession. Someone who, like me, couldn't let it die. But the order came from higher up. Federal. Someone had pulled strings. My new assignment? Compile every piece of evidence we had onto a flash drive. So I spent the day hunched over my desk, combing through the archives, piecing together crime scene photos, forensics reports, witness statements. I knew them all by heart. I doubted some Ivy League fed in a corner office would see something I hadn't. Hours passed. The sun sank behind the tree-line outside my window. I sat there, surrounded by dusty case files and the glow of my screen, rechecking everything. By midnight, I decided I was done. Every relevant document, every lead, every twisted scrap of evidence was on that drive. The FBI could take it from here. I was about to shut my computer down when something caught my eye. A file. One I didn't recognize. Witness_1.mp3. It was an audio file. Somehow, I had never noticed it before. Hell, I don't think I had ever listened to it. To my knowledge, all the witness statements taken that night had been written, transcribed by hand. I clicked on it, figuring it must have been from Ethan Delaney, the motel owner's son who found the body. I drained the last sip of my cold coffee, leaned back in my chair, and jacked up the volume. The audio quality was terrible, shrouded in static, warped by the grainy distortion of an old analog recording. But what sent a chill down my spine was that the supposed first witness had a woman's voice. The following is a transcript of what was on that file. First responder: what were you doing in the area before you discovered the body? Witness 1: I'm staying in room 14, right next door to where it happened. Been there about 2 weeks now. Times are rough, you know how it is. Was living out of my van before this. But that old thing finally gave out on me. First responder: apologies, ma'am. I meant, what were you doing immediately before discovering the body? Witness 1: right. Well, I got back from work around 9. I clean over at the elementary school in town. Came back, had dinner, watched some news, then turned in for the night. First responder: can you describe how and when you found the body? Witness 1: *G, it must have been around 10. I was just getting ready for bed when I heard this loud banging from next door. Thought maybe he had a lady friend over, so I tried to ignore it. But it didn't stop. It wasn't rhythmic like a headboard. It was choppy, like someone splitting wood. It got so loud, I finally got up to complain. The door was unlocked when I knocked. Pushed it open, and that's when I saw him. That poor, poor man. *. First responder: could you please describe the scene in as much detail as possible? Witness 1: *. It was awful. He was kneeling in the corner. His head was gone. Just gone. Blood was everywhere, dripping from the walls, pooling on the carpet. I nearly threw up right then and there. And that's when I saw him. *. Pause. First responder: could you go on? You said there was someone else at the scene? Witness 1: *. Yeah. A real weirdo. Didn't notice him at first. He was peeking at me from behind the bathroom door, just watching me. We locked eyes, and I swear, my blood went ice cold. He stepped out, slow and casual, like he'd been expecting me. *. Pause. First responder: please continue. Start by describing the man you saw. Witness 1: *. He was a freak, plain and simple. When I really looked at him, I saw his head was huge, bulging, almost bald and lumpy, like it was too full of something. The back of his skull sagged down like a swollen sack. And his face, it was too thin, like someone had stretched the skin too tight over his bones. A needle-sharp chin, hollow cheeks. His eyes bulged, yellowish with milky white patches like cataracts. And the worst part? He was massive, at least 7 feet tall, but hunched like he had to fold himself down to fit in the room. *. First responder: can you describe what he was wearing? Witness 1: yeah, he had on this long black duster coat, but it was patched together with red and green fabric, stitched like a damn quilt. The coat dragged the floor, but I could see brown leather boots poking out from underneath. First responder: can you? Witness 1: *. Almost forgot. He was holding something. I don't even know what to call it. It looked like a lobster pot with a handle, but instead of mesh, it was covered in blades. Dozens of them. Knives, razors, axe heads, chains, all jagged and fused together like some butcher's nightmare. *. First responder: right? What did you do when he came closer to you? Witness 1: *. I ran. I just ran. Bolted out of the motel and down the road until I realized, shit, everything I owned was still in my room. Didn't fancy starting over from nothing for a third time, so I turned back. And that's when I saw you guys pulling in. *. First responder: all right. And how long was it from discovering the body until you called 911? Witness 1: oh, I didn't call 911, honey. First responder: you didn't? Witness 1: Nope. By the time I got back, the place was already crawling with cops. Still haven't been allowed back in my room. First responder. Are you aware that end of recording? The last few seconds were muffled, the static hum growing louder until the recording cut out entirely. I just sat there in my chair, frozen. I didn't know what to think. Didn't even realize how long I'd been sitting in the dark, staring at my screen, until my wife came in to tell me she was heading to bed. I kissed her goodnight and finally shut the computer down. The USB drive was still sitting there, right where I'd left it. I hesitated, just for a moment. Then I stood up, locked the office door, and walked away. I changed, washed up, and climbed into bed beside my wife. I kissed the back of her neck and closed my eyes. That thing, the one responsible for all of this, was still out there. But that wasn't my problem anymore.